when you look at why most women get into firearms, it's usually out of necessity. Something bad has already happened to you, or you feel like it's going to happen to you. So do I think everybody should have guns? Yes, I think everybody who is responsible should have guns. And I think everybody who is responsible needs to tell the irresponsible people, I don't think you're ready for that yet, but we can get you there. And you may even get hurt a little bit. But that has to be part of your mindset, because the cognitive load is real. There's a lot of stuff going on at once, and you have to be able to, like that, prioritize, what do I need to do right now? Just because they were in the military does not mean that they understand this. So I exist in this really weird space. I'm like discovering the parts of me as a woman that make me very important. But people are like, how do you say what you want to say all the time? I say what I want to say because I'm a free American. And I'm a free American because I can fight. I'm not guaranteed to win. You can't tell me we shouldn't have guns.
Hey everybody, welcome back to JP Podcast. Today we have a good friend of mine, Jerah Hutchins, owner of Clearing the Chamber, firearm instruction and preparedness trainer. And we actually had her come out and do it. It's going to be, I'm fired up for this show today. You're going to learn some stuff today. Jerah, thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me. This has been a long time coming, I think, and I've been really excited. I've been really looking forward to this.
We have too. So,
yes.
13,000 people you've trained on how to use a firearm.
Yes, I've been teaching for 17 years.
Wow. So tell us, what got you into, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to this point of your life where you said, hey, I want to help other people prepare for these moments in life.
Well, you have to go back to the way beginning, because statistically, men get into guns because it's fun for them, or their dad taught them, or their grandpa taught them, or they have a hunting culture in their family. And when you look at why most women get into firearms, it's usually out of necessity. Something bad has already happened to you, or you feel like it's going to happen to you based on a myriad of factors. And so in the very beginning of Jerah, right, 1982 baby, very cusp millennial, right, at the very beginning, my parents divorced when I was really little. And my father was extremely and egregiously abusive, like physically and mentally abusive. And he would take a chair from the dining room table, and he would put it in the middle of the kitchen, and he would make me watch him beat my mother. Wow. For the most trivial things. I remember one time she bought pantyhose without asking, and she had a business job. She was a secretary, at an office, and he just lost his mind and beat the crap out of her for it. And she finally left him, got divorced. There was a significant amount of time when she was a single mom. And I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and I cherished those years. My grandparents were amazing human beings, and my grandfather in particular was very involved and a very hands-on person with his grandchildren. He taught me so many things that were really, frankly, out of the ordinary for a woman to know. He was a carpenter. He was a brick mason. He was an entrepreneur. He owned a very successful window washing company, which now in my 40s, when I look back, it was incredibly brilliant, because he would wake up at 3:00 in the morning. He'd be on the road by 4. He'd get all of his work done before it got too hot outside. So he'd be home by noon or 1. He had the rest of the day to himself to do whatever he wanted to, whether it be build something in the garage, take on another project, figure out another way to make money. And the overhead was extremely low. I mean, he needed a truck and sponges and squeegees and himself, water and soap. That's it. That's all he needed. And so I learned a lot by spending time with him, because my mom was working. So by the time that she came to pick me up from my grandparents' house, which God bless them for the free childcare, too. And, and we got home, I was fed, homework done. I had spent time with my grandparents. I had learned some stuff. And then by the time that we got home, it was, time for bed. And my mom wasn't, I didn't spend a lot of quality time with her. A lot of my quality time was spent with my grandparents. And one of the things that my grandpa loved to do was shoot guns. And so I learned how to shoot guns at a really young age. So I'm not the statistic. I was somebody that, was brought into it naturally, and I just genuinely gravitated toward it and loved it. But there was an intrinsic need inside of me to protect myself often, right? My father was abusive. When my mom got remarried, he was better, but it was still an extremely tumultuous relationship. There was still physical violence in the house. It just wasn't as often, as it was before. So there was always a need for me to protect myself. And then when I was 16, I was raped by a family friend, which is very statistical. So if you look at rape statistics, it's usually someone a friend of the family, sometimes someone in your family. And so that intrinsic need for me to protect myself grew. But then there was kind of this arm that came off of that because I had a younger brother. So I had an older sister that didn't ever live with us. We had the same father, but she had a different mother. And then my brother came along, who's 7 years younger than me. And so now I had a thing that I had to protect that was over and above myself, right? And I just gravitated toward that. I started shooting competitively. And then when I got into my 20s, my mom really wanted me to go to college. And I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to go in the military. My dad was a Marine. My uncle was in the Navy. We had a huge family history of people serving in the military. And that's what I really wanted to do. And my mom really wanted me to go to college. So I moved out to the city. I'm from a small town in East Texas. I moved out to the city. And I'm trying this, college thing, and I don't like it. But the one thing that I remember very vividly was I'm living in off-campus housing. I'm not living on campus. And I kind of walk in and, all of our neighbors, that lived in the apartments around us, and I'm toting this big shotgun, rolling in my apartment. And it was very weird to them that I would have a gun in my house. And it was very weird to me that they wouldn't. Because it was always, that was culture.
That was the norm,
that was normal for me.
Yeah.
And so as I got, for a little further, into my 20s, because one of the things that I loved doing was going to the gun range. But I wouldn't see a lot of women there. And the women that I did see there were there with husbands, brothers, dads, or whatever. And they would see me there by myself. And that was a really weird thing. I mean, you have to think this is 20 years ago. And so some of them would get the courage to come up to me and go, "Hey, do you think that you can show me really quick how to do that?" And so I thought to myself, yeah, I mean, I would love to do that. And then the more I did it, the more I loved it. And then I thought, I can make money doing this because there's not a lot of women that are doing this. And so Clearing the Chamber was just kind of born out of a part-time side hustle.
Wow. So you ended up, you saw abuse as a kid. Your grandparents raised you. They get you familiar with the concept of guns and safety. You enjoy that part of it. Mm-hmm. And then your brother is born 7 years younger, you said, right? And you want to protect him. Then something happens to you that triggers you wanting to be able to protect yourself more. And then you become somebody that teaches people how to protect themselves. So Clearing the Chamber is a company that helps people learn how to use guns, how to shoot. But we had you here at the office for a course on just awareness, situational awareness. And so how did it evolve? You went from I'm teaching people how to shoot guns to I'm teaching people how to protect themselves.
I realized, and I truly believe that this is a gift that God has given me, is an ability for incredible self-reflection and to realize when someone around me knows more than I do. And I want to learn it. I want to know what they know because knowledge is power. Courage is currency. And so having the courage to ask someone and bring yourself at their feet and go, you know more than me. I want to know what you know. Will you teach me? Kind of thing. Like those women at the gun range did. So I knew how to shoot a gun. I was really good at marksmanship, but combatives was never something that I was exposed to. And so I actually started working at a gun range up in Frisco, Texas, before it was even being built. I was selling memberships for them because I was a woman and I wasn't terrible to look at. I mean, I knew they were exploiting me. I'm not stupid. But I could also talk shop about guns because I'd had 10 or 15 years of experience at that point shooting guns. I knew calibers, I knew platforms. I could talk about shooting standing, kneeling, and prone. I could talk about how the backstop is built. I knew all that stuff just from life. And so the person that owned that saw that ability in me and was like, I'm going to leverage her to sell a bunch of memberships. And I did. I sold $1 million of pre-opening memberships before the place even opened.
This is for a gun range.
Yes, we sold $1 million in memberships. We had 2,000 members before the range even opened. Okay. And so I was, very, very heavily involved in that. And then when we started training, or when we started bringing in and hiring people, we were hiring trainers that specialize in these doorways and corners classes, and these combatives classes, and these weapons retentions classes, and these unorthodox shooting positions classes. And all of this was fascinating to me. And so I just started taking classes, every one that I could. After work, on the weekends, I wanted to know, all the things. I wanted to know all the things. But one thing that I discovered while I was taking those classes is these people had a lot of experience, but their curriculum was trash. So they didn't know how to write engaging curriculum. And so in my family, we have a big, my grandmother was a published poet. My aunt is a mystery novelist. I did very light journalism, in high school and in my college years, I would write articles on things. So we have a writing family. And so I would go to the trainers, and some of them snubbed me and didn't want to do it. And then some of them were very open to it. And I was like, can I help you write more engaging and visually appealing curriculum for you to get more students? And some of them, they wanted to do that. And so we worked together on that. And that gave me a lot of experience in writing the back-end curriculum, helping students understand and retain the information, because there's a difference between instruction and teaching. Okay, instruction is you hear something that someone else says and you believe it and you regurgitate it. That's it. That's all instruction is. Teaching is actually understanding why you are sort of giving this knowledge to another person, and then you have to follow back up and go, do you understand it? Show me you understand it. And I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't want to be an instructor. And so that's just kind of how it all started, and kind of how I got really good at the whole curriculum. And then I started writing. I would see a problem, women would come up to me so much and say, well, I don't know how to carry in this outfit. Like, how am I supposed to be comfortable and carry this gun in this outfit? And sometimes you're not going to be comfortable, carrying a gun. Like, there's just some outfits that is just really hard. But I was like, I could write workshops of problems, because women were a very underserved market. And so I would start writing workshops like Preparing What You Wear, which is, how do I carry a weapon in these different outfits that we have to wear? You're easy, right? It's a t-shirt, it's a button-up shirt, it's a suit. It's pants and a shirt. You can carry the same way in pretty much any outfit a man would ever wear. Women wear so many different things that they have to prepare in a different way. We can use a lot of the same gear that men use, but we have to prepare in a different way. And so then pregnant women would go, well, what are my options? Because I'm in a very vulnerable position. I'm carrying a life inside of me, and my body is different, right, than it was before. So how do I prepare? So then I wrote a workshop called How to Protect What You're Expecting. Right? So if I get the question 5, 6, 7 times, I'm probably going to write a workshop or a class about it.
Got it. So you saw a lot of people were approaching you, and it was opportunities for you to develop courses around it.
Yes.
So what's your take on people owning guns in terms of, should everybody have a gun? Should everybody carry a gun? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that as a person, you have to have a lot of self-reflection, because responsibility comes with freedom. It's a byproduct. They work hand in hand. We can't be free Americans. People ask me all the time. I get this question a lot. They're like, you just say whatever you want to say. And a lot of people really love that about me. Some people hate that about me, right? I mean, it's just part of life. But people are like, how do you say what you want to say all the time? I say what I want to say because I'm a free American. And I'm a free American because I can fight. I'm not guaranteed to win, but I will go toe-to-toe verbally, physically, and legislatively with anyone that wants to take away my freedom, because I know that I love freedom so much that I'm willing to be responsible for it. And so as human beings, we have to engage in self-reflection and go, am I living the kind of lifestyle that breeds responsible freedom? And if I'm not there yet, then I probably need to rethink this whole gun ownership thing. Maybe I need to look at different weapons that are more palpable to my lifestyle, right? So if you're a 21-year-old and you're going and drinking every weekend, maybe a pepper gel gun is better for you. Maybe a knife is better for you and not a gun. Okay, so that's what we have to do as people, is we have to reflect. So do I think everybody should have guns? Yes, I think everybody who is responsible should have guns. And I think everybody who is responsible needs to tell the irresponsible people, I don't think you're ready for that yet, but we can get you there. So this is a societal thing where we have to influence other people to do better. And that's the thing about influencing, is when you're an influencer, you're a social media influencer, I don't like that, because I think that if you're an influencer, you have to be willing to steward the minds that you wish to influence. And so that's so much more than putting out content on social media. You have to get to the grassroots, into the community, and you have to be spending time with these people and getting to know them and holding them accountable too, but also encouraging them and lifting them up and educating them, because education is medicine for almost everything.
So what do you say to people that say we shouldn't have guns? What would you say to that person?
If you look at people who are saying that we shouldn't have guns, and I can give you a lot of examples. I can give you a relatively recent example too of a politician who says that. Debbie Wasserman who I can't ever say her name. It's Wasserman Schultz. Okay, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she's an elected official, and she likes to say that all the time. And there was a hearing that was done, I think, within the last year, where she brought in experts that said, that we shouldn't have guns, and statistically this and statistically that, which are all, statistics can be manipulated.
Sure.
Okay, but she said something about abused women that really made me a little bit angry, because this expert said, well, women who are in abusive homes where a gun is present are more likely to be abused with that weapon or killed with that weapon. Well, no shit. I mean, of course that's the case. But the solution to that problem isn't to take away our most fundamental right. We have no First Amendment without a Second Amendment. We have no Bill of Rights without a Second Amendment. We have no Constitution without a Second Amendment. We aren't free Americans without a Second Amendment. All those things are just words on paper without the will of the people, without the physical will of the people. Okay, so if you're taking and using abused women as a catalyst to disarm America, that makes me really angry, because I have a nonprofit called WADE, which is the Women's Awareness and Defense Endeavor, and I have solved that problem. Because if you take a woman out of an abusive relationship and you get her into an independent life where she can make money, where she can have crucial conversations, which is a wonderful book, by the way, where she understands what healthy relationships look like, and she can defend herself, they don't go back. 134 women I've helped since my organization, not just me, but other people have helped since 2019, and 2 have gone back. The problem's been solved. So you can't tell me we shouldn't have guns. It is a mental health problem, and you can do 2 things at the same time. You can deal with the people that shouldn't be having the guns, that are irresponsible with the guns, and you can deal with that through the justice system. And then you have to deal with the mental health problem that we have right now because of phones, because of internet, because of unfettered access to information that kids have. You can do 2 things at the same time. But politicians and gun grabbers don't want to acknowledge that. They think it's one problem, and it's the guns, and we have to take away guns from everybody. And that isn't just a problem. That isn't just offensive to freedom. That is a national security issue. I'm in the military. I understand this. Okay. The reason that we haven't been invaded inland is because all countries know. This was a huge example in World War II when they bombed Pearl Harbor. They knew that if they invaded us inland, that they wouldn't just have to deal with our military. Our country is a military. Our whole country is a military. There are hundreds of millions of guns in this country. And if somebody wanted to invade us inland, our military is going to be the primary response, but our citizenry is going to be the secondary response. And that's what makes us unbeatable. From a hand-to-hand combat standpoint, right? Obviously, there's other types of warfare. But if you want to go toe-to-toe with America, you're not just going toe-to-toe with our military, you're going toe-to-toe with our citizenry.
Yeah, when you look at countries that have been taken over, the first thing they do is they de-arm the population. Like
and I'll tell you something else. Yes, absolutely. Cuba, Venezuela are wonderful examples of what it's like to disarm your citizens, right? And then you have the Venezuelan government in, I think, 2013 or 2014 that started firing upon its own populace for accepting humanitarian aid. That's a big problem. And Venezuela was an economic powerhouse 15 or 20 years ago. And that's what happens. And this is why I'm so against gun registries. Two, number one, it's none of your business how many guns I have. It doesn't matter. But number two, if you look back through history, right, and if we don't pay attention to history, that's a problem, all right? 100% of countries who enacted a gun registry also enacted gun confiscation. 100% fulfillment rate.
It's the first thing that happens, so they know what they have to go get.
Exactly. They're putting together an inventory of what you have so that they know where it is when they want to come get it.
When you buy a gun right now, though, you've got to register it, right?
No,
So
not in Texas.
Not in Texas.
Not in Texas. There are states that we don't have a nationwide gun registry.
Okay.
So when you have people that are pushing for that, so right now guns rights are states' rights. So a state will say whether or not you have a registry.
Got it.
Texas doesn't have one.
Got it.
Okay.
I was in California before. I think when I bought a gun, I think I had to register it.
Now, they do have, because you have to go through a federal firearms license to buy a gun, they have a record of who originally bought the gun. But after that, it's private property.
Got it.
So if you sell it or give it, to somebody, which you have to be very careful with that because there is a degree of liability there, and you want to make sure that you're selling it or giving it to someone who can legally have it, who is going to be responsible, for it. So if I sell a gun, which I don't do very often, as private property, I like to make sure that that person has a license to carry, because then I know that they've had a background check. I know they're not a felon. They're less likely to use it for nefarious purposes, and that gives me a little bit of peace of mind.
So your solutions to people that say, hey, you know what, look at this person murdered all these people, shot up this school, shot up this concert. The solution, instead of removing the guns, you would advise people to do what? More thorough background check, more gun training. What would be the solution to try to prevent some of that?
When you teach a young person how to shoot a gun, the byproducts of that training and knowledge are things like responsibility, accountability. There's camaraderie there. You are all the things that breed good mental health come from training like this. You're learning how to do a hard thing, right? There's a lot of responsibility attached to it. So if you look back in history, when this was a normal thing for kids to learn, when this was a bonding experience for fathers and sons, we didn't have school shootings. You used to be able to, you could buy M1 Garand in the Sears catalog and have it delivered to your home in 1960. This wasn't a problem like it is now.
You think it's a training problem then?
Part of it is a training problem. Part of it is that we have feminized men so much. And if I'm honest with you, there was a decade of my life when I was part of that problem. When feminism became so toxic and backwards that it wasn't about women having the right to vote or women having access to their own money or women being able to kind of start businesses. It became, how bad do we hate men is what it became, right? And so we feminized men so much, and we dropped the masculinity that men needed to have. And we made men feel bad for teaching their sons these things. And that became a huge part of the problem. And then you couple that with the mental health deficiency that we have from kids not being able to escape bullying on social media. All the broken homes and divorces that we have. So much single motherhood. And who usually gets primary custody of the children?
Mom.
Usually the mom, okay?
Yeah,
so now you have women that are raising men no father in the home, it's a problem. And so now, of course, we're going to have issues where kids are going to lose their mind, or people in general are going to lose their mind. And the demon of, I got to kill a bunch of people around me, or I have to get revenge on XYZ, of course that's going to take over a mind. And then you have a human that's making a decision to take a tool that can be used for good or bad and taking it out on people. So to me, the solution to the problem that the government doesn't want to acknowledge is that education is the medicine for this. We have to get back to teaching kids responsibility. We have to get back to responsibility in this, especially. We have to re-normalize teaching kids how to defend themselves. Man, I got into a lot of fights in high school. After I got raped, my whole mindset changed. I wasn't reserved in conversations anymore. I was going to protect people. That was my mission in life. If you were bullying a kid in my high school that was a nerd, or that had a learning deficiency, or that had Down syndrome, I kicked your ass. I went to jail for it 4 times. And my grandpa had to bail me out every time. And he was like, listen, you're about to fly out into the world as an adult. You can't continue to solve problems like this anymore. If you want to fight, I got no problems with that, but you need to take some anger management classes. And if you're going to fight, you need to do it in a productive, controlled setting. So I started getting into boxing, and I started getting into MMA. And these were all really great tools for me to bring into the self-defense world. And I think that it's stuff that kids need to be exposed to. Kids need to know how to defend themselves on the one. It's 2 horns on the same goat. You got to know how to defend yourself on one horn, and you have to understand how to have crucial conversations and solve problems the right way on the other. This one is the one that you're going to use the most often. This one is the one that you're going to fall back on when people can't be reasoned with. Sure. That's the solution to the problem. But it's so faux pas to talk about, and we need to start talking about it again. It used to be a normal conversation, not one that you would have every single day because that would be weird, but it was a normal conversation for you to sit your kids down before they went out from under the wing of your protection and go, hey, here's when you kill people and here's when you don't. Here's when you use lethal force and here's when you don't. It was part of your education as a human being in your home. And we need to talk about what constitutes a reason for you to use lethal force against somebody. A big part of the problem is we haven't been talking about it. We haven't been teaching people about it. So now people are shooting each other over parking spaces at Target, and people are shooting their classmates at school. Some of them aren't even the bullies, right? And so we have to be, and parents have to start taking responsibility for their jackass kids sometimes. That's that's the solution to the problem.
Yeah. We have that's something I want to teach my boys, not from a hunting perspective, because that's just not me. I don't hunt, but I want to know if I had to hunt that I could hunt. So, but for teaching my boys in terms of not to be comfortable with firearms, to be safe around them, it wasn't something that I was exposed to. You know, my dad didn't. We had a gun, but it wasn't something we went and shot or, used. And I think there's that curiosity around things that people aren't exposed to, like, what is it? And then maybe they're, as kids, it's like, oh, let me show you my dad's gun, and it's this mystery. And then there's not proper training around it or even access to those kinds of things, in a house, because we keep ours in our safe.
Mm-hmm. Which you should.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of family dynamics, you're saying that that's part of it, because boys are not growing up with their dads and they're not being taught how to defend themselves. The other part, using a firearm or using a firearm, but the other part is defending themselves, just being able to have basic self-defense. That should be something that I think is taught, in some kind of PE or some kind of, you look at people that have gone through self-defense and they don't have a need to hurt other people or want to hurt other people. They're typically more calm in those situations, where the people that don't have that training are the ones that do it. Their anger, their emotions, 0 to 100. So you're saying family dynamics, you're saying gun safety, gun education, and you're saying proper self-defense.
Yeah, and I want to stay on family dynamics for a second, because you said something that was important. I disagree. I don't think this should be taught in PE. I don't know that this should necessarily be taught in school. I think it's a rite of passage for parents to teach their kids this, or parents to decide who
teach
teaches
their kids
this.
self-defense.
Yeah. If you go to a school, especially the state that our schools are in now, I don't want the school teaching my kid self-defense, because I want to make sure that my child understands when self-defense is necessary and when a conversation is crucial. I want them to understand that, because we should be sitting down and having crucial conversations. If you're getting bullied at school, you should have the guts. We should teach our kids to have the guts to go, why are you bullying me? What's going on with you? Can I help you? And now a kid may not be very receptive to that, but at least you tried. You know what I mean? Like, it has to start there, because now you're planting a seed of, I'm not mad at you. I care about you. Like, where is this coming from? Because it's coming from somewhere that has nothing to do with the kid being bullied. It's coming from somewhere else. Okay. Another issue about family dynamics is I want to create a culture where both parents are on board with this. That's been a problem in the past too. Women are more emotional. We're nurturers, we're supporters, right? And so sometimes it's very hard, especially for women who haven't been exposed to firearms before, which is a lot of them, to like wrap their head around the fact that, hold on, you're taking my 12-year-old out, teach him how to shoot a gun. That's weird to me. Like, I get that because I'm a woman too. But I have a different perspective, a wider perspective, because I was exposed to it at such a young age. And so I understand how to teach it, why it's important, all these things.
Do you think that should be taught to everybody?
I think that as a society, it should be something that's part of our culture again, because it did used to be. I mean, you think about pioneer women.
Sure.
In the 1800s, early 1900s, unless you were very wealthy, women knew how to use firearms.
So what do you say to people that say we don't need that now because it's a different time?
We do need it now. We do need it now because statistically, women, and we talked about this when I came and taught the class here, statistically, women are actually more responsible for the physical protection of children than men, even though men are the protectors and providers.
Sure.
Right? But statistically, women are spending more time with the children, so they have to know how to protect them too, is my point, right? It doesn't mean that we need to erase men from the equation. It doesn't mean that we need to make men less than. If anything, the couple should be more involved together on what defense of this family looks like, right? And we talked about submission too. Remember when we talked about submission in class? This is a very important dynamic for wives and mothers to understand about your overall family protection, because you have to be on board too. This has to be a family plan. Your emergency plan, your preparedness plan, it has to be a family plan. And women don't, especially very independent feminist women, they don't like this idea of submission, right? But in a nuclear family, it's meant to be a dual effort. Submission isn't only for the women, submission is for men too. It's a dual effort, right? And I'll explain it again. So you have to look at the definition of the word as a whole. So if you crack open Webster's dictionary or you look it up online, submission typically, it has 3 definitions, right? It has you're consenting to a certain treatment. That's definition number 1. If you're a woman, and I'm going to do this from the female perspective, if you're a woman and you are seeking out a healthy relationship, which means that you're seeking out somebody who is kind, who has discernment, who has the masculinity to protect you because they work on themselves, they work on their body, they work on their mind, they're making good decisions, they have a good financial perspective. It doesn't mean that they have to have a lot of money, but they're also not wasting it, right? Those things, plus more, if that's what you're looking for, that makes a good man, in my opinion. And if you find that good man, you're going to submit to his treatment of you because it's going to be good.
Sure.
It's going to be good. So then we get to the part that everybody hates, which is to acquiesce to a higher authority. Well, the person who can physically protect you and your family, who has that discernment, who makes good decisions, who is kind, right? Why wouldn't you want that person to lead your family? Of course you would want that person to lead your family. It doesn't mean that you don't matter. It doesn't mean that your opinion isn't valid. It doesn't mean that you don't have a say in things. It just means that there has to be a leader. There's a president and a vice president for a reason, but they both work together on a myriad of things. Okay. So Now you have the good person and you're acquiescing to the higher authority. Well, the third definition of submission is to present a proposal. And that's where you come in as the mom and the wife. Okay. You say, hey, I don't know about that decision, honey. I don't know. I think that might be detrimental to our family, and I want to tell you why. So now you're submitting a proposal, right? And now you get to work together. The vice president comes in, submits a proposal. The president hears it and says, you know what? I think that's a really good idea. I think maybe this time we're going to do it your way. And that's how it works. That's submission by definition. Okay. But there's a fourth element to it. If we're going to talk about family preparedness and defense of family, that the wife has to be on board with. Because when the husband goes away, so you travel sometimes, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Quite a bit,
Yeah,
probably, right?
Yeah.
So, and you have 2 and 1 on the way?
Yep.
Okay. So now what Danny has to do when you're gone is her role changes. So when you're together, you do what you're good at. You do your strengths, right? And your primary mission in your marriage is protector and provider. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. And Danny's primary mission in the marriage is nurturer and supporter. Okay. Awesome. When you go away, the dynamic changes for as long as you're gone. And so now she also has to take on the role of protector and provider. It's her submission.
That's great.
It's her submission. Okay. And then when you get back, she gets to relinquish that and submit it back to you. And now if Danny's gone and the kids come home from school and they've had a terrible day and they're crying and one of them got bullied and one of them had a bad day, now guess what you get to do? You have to walk into your submission, which is nurturer and supporter of your kids, because dads do that too. And then when she comes home, you get to submit it right back to her. That's the family dynamic of defense and preparedness, and just overall teamwork in a marriage. It isn't that one is above another. It's you're constantly stepping into different roles and resubmitting back the main mission to the person that can carry it out the best.
So you said we did a drill when you were here and you were like, hey, you're with the kids, you're here protecting yourself. Obviously, Danny's with the kids more time than I am. And when moms are out with their kids, like what's the statistic of most attacks that happen to women? It's when they're by themselves, I'm assuming, like single women out somewhere.
What predators look for are women who are alone or distracted with children. Alone, right? Like they're the caretaker at that point and they don't have a husband or a man with them. And they look for people who are timid, that don't walk with confidence, that don't make eye contact, right? Cindy probably ain't getting attacked. Like her demeanor is very confident. She walks with confidence, right? And she looks at people and she engages people. Women like that are far less likely to get attacked by a predator than a woman who is very timid and reserved. Okay. Now, Cindy is also very busy. So there could be a situation where she's very distracted. We're on our phones. We're doing, how we organize the transport is very important too. Like when we're carrying things, right? So you saw me when I walked in today, I had a bunch of stuff, in my hands. Well, the reason that I decided that was okay is because, how far was I walking? 40 feet, to get to the door, right? If I had a longer walk through a dark parking garage, to my apartment or something, I would have organized that transport differently because there's more opportunity for something bad to happen to me or a predator to see that I have too much going on in my hands. I need to reorganize that a little bit better, right? So you have to kind of be able to analyze your situation and kind of weigh those likelihoods. You
said you got a beginning of it. You said you got to kind of know yourself and pepper spray or gun or knife. When you do situational preparedness with women, what's like the 2, 3, 4, 5 things you're like, these are the most important? Is there like a top 5, top 10, like have a weapon, always be aware? These like, is there advice that you would give to them?
Yes. Number 1, when you're alone, especially, you have to mitigate distraction. I know that people hear this all the time, but I can't stress how important it is. When I'm alone, walking, especially in the dark or in an unknown area, I am never in my phone. My phone is secured either in a bag on me or in my pocket. Like, I am looking around and paying attention to my surroundings, and I'm looking for things that I'm just being observant. I'm not being paranoid. I'm not even necessarily anticipating an attack. I'm just looking at what's going on around me, because a duress situation isn't just defined as somebody attacking you. It could be, somebody's operating heavy machinery in the street and you're walking on the sidewalk. And what if they don't do what they need to do and they run it right over you? Like, you're looking for just things that are kind of out of the ordinary. So that's number one, mitigate distraction.
Okay.
Number two, you have to get in the habit of having a weapon on you, just like you have your phone, your glasses, your purse. Like, it has to become a part of you. And it doesn't have to be a gun. It could be anything that you're comfortable carrying, because any force multiplier is better than no force multiplier, especially if you're a woman, because you're at an automatic physical disadvantage, because your predator is likely going to be male. All right. The third thing is that you have to expose yourself to scenario-based training. And I know that you can attest to this, because when we did our class here, you actually got emotional about the scenario that I chose for you, because I chose to be your wife and make you feel like I'm hurt. I'm your wife and I'm physically hurt. What are you going to do to help me? And you failed the first time. Let's be honest.
We had to put what do you call it? A tourniquet.
Yeah, it was a tourniquet situation, right? It was medical. It wasn't even anybody
and you were really
attacking your wife.
You were like yelling, screaming. So it wasn't like I was role playing. You were full blown. Then I'm like, oh shit, I got to get with it.
Yeah, because and that's part of why I write my classes the way I write my classes, is if you're going to take a medical class or you're going to take a combatives class, you need to get into the mindset that you have to train like you fight and you have to train like you want to be saved. Because, and there's an element to that training in which you're going to feel pain. There's going to be an adrenaline dump, and you may even get hurt a little bit. But that has to be part of your mindset, because the cognitive load is real. There's a lot of stuff going on at once, and you have to be able to, like that, prioritize, what do I need to do right now? Because if you remember in that scenario, we also simulated your children, right?
Yeah,
you had two kids, and they're little.
Yep.
And they're not going to understand what's going on, and they're going to be crying in the background, and they're going to be running around if they can walk, or if it's a baby that's just going to be laying on the ground, like, what are you going to do? What comes first? My wife bleeding out of her femoral artery in my kitchen because she cut herself with a knife? Or do I do something with the kids first, right? What's the deal? And so the first time you failed, the second time you did a lot better. Why did you do a lot better the second time? Because you were exposed to the problem and you knew what the priority had to be then, right? You had to learn what's the priority, right? Are your kids going to really hurt themselves in the few minutes that it takes for you to deal with this problem? Probably not. You need to deal with that, okay? Because you have to understand the value of time, right? If it takes you a minute and a half to 2 minutes to bleed out of the femoral artery, that has to be the priority, right? I know kids move fast and I know kids get into stuff, but you have to think about what's the more likely scenario. My wife dies or my kid gets into something they shouldn't get into, right? And you can talk to your kids and save your wife at the same time. It's one of the only times that multitasking is necessary, right? Multitasking in and of itself can be very inefficient, right? But if you're trying to tie the tourniquet onto the wife and you're telling the 3-year-old who can understand what you're saying and follow directions, hey, you just need to sit down and wait for daddy. Don't worry. It's okay. I know you're upset. Just wait for daddy. Daddy's going to handle it, right? You can do that at the same time that you're putting a tourniquet on your wife. And those are the things that you have to learn to do, and your body will never go where your mind has never been. And so if you're not thinking through that, and if you're not acting out those scenarios as real as humanly possible, your ability to react and move and actually bring a solution to the situation of duress is going to be null and void. It's never going to happen. You're going to freeze up. And then that time is going to run out and your wife's going to be dead. And that's just the truth of it.
So you were saying, number one, situational awareness. You were saying 2, what was number 2?
Situational awareness. Bring a weapon into your lifestyle. Bring a weapon. Right? And number 3, scenario-based training.
Scenario-based
Those
training.
are the top 3 things that you can do. And if you expose yourself to a scenario-based training once a month, actual scenario-based training, a class, right? Or you get friends to, like what you did here, right? If you did something like that quarterly, that would be a good thing, right? And then I could put people on a maintenance program with guns, right? I put my students on a maintenance program where their fundamentals, load it, check it, rack it, shoot it, drop it. They can do that with a dry gun at home. Like, you keep in with those fundamentals and you make it part of your lifestyle, and you spend 10 or 15 minutes a day with your gun. I do dry fire exercises for 10 minutes a day before I ever put my gun on my body. I go have coffee because you got to have the caffeine before you get into the, you got to wake up, right? And then I do dry fire exercises, take a shower, get dressed, put my gun on my body, go about my day.
So let's go through those 3 real quick. So 1, situational awareness. Most common things women should look out for, like in situational awareness. Hey, who's out? Where are people around me? What time is it? Like, I'm leaving the office. I'm by myself. Should I have my keys? Like, the most common things that they could do to avoid that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do things that are going to be physically demanding on you. Try to do those things during the day if you can, right? Like going to get groceries, right? I mean, we'll be damned if we're going to make a second trip.
For sure.
To the car to get the rest of our groceries. We're going to try to do it in one, so organizing the transport. Get a foldable wagon and put it in the back of your car and put the groceries in there and make sure that you have the ability to have your hands free, right? Try to get gas during the day. It's not always feasible, but the things where people are hanging out that are, could be nefarious, and gas stations is a really popular one. Get gas during the day when people are there and you can have witnesses and potentially people that will help you, even though we all know people are more likely to film you than help you. Mitigate distraction. Make sure that you're if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. So trust your gut a little bit more, even if it means you have to be kind of rude. Demand your physical boundaries. If someone is in your physical space, remember 21 feet, the average person can clear 21 feet in 1 second. Not the athletic person, not the tall person, the average person. So you need to always be scanning your surroundings and, identify people that are 21 to 30 feet away from you. And, if it's a mom with her kids, probably not a problem. If it's a guy with his kids or his family, probably not a problem. But people who are alone, people who are not dressed for the season, right? If you got somebody in a trench coat and sunglasses in the middle of a hot Texas summer, there's something wrong with that. It could be, that somebody's trying to hide, a larger weapon, or it could be that they're just crazy. I don't know, but it's not somebody that I want to be around because there's something wrong, there. So from a situational awareness standpoint, talk to your friends about this. Like, that's what we have to, you remember I said courage is currency. It was, it took me a little bit of courage to sit my girlfriend group down before a major trip when we were going to Mexico, because I thought they were going to think I was nuts. And they kind of did in the beginning, but I had, I had a sheet that I had printed out that had the embassy information and the consulate, information and emergency things that, places that we could go in Mexico if something happened, things to watch out for. Like, I had done a lot of research on this, and we can't take the kind of weapons that we are available to us, in the United States, that we have this amazing freedom to carry. We can't take those into Mexico. We can't take those into Spain and Brazil and all the places that we like to go. So you have to have a different kind of plan. And they looked at me like I was nuts when we were at the airport. And I'm like, I'm serious when I tell you that it's a problem. And then we ended up having a girl, in our group that went off with some guy, because one of the things on my sheet was we go to the bathroom in twos, no matter what. No matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we go to the bathroom in twos. And she didn't follow it. She disappeared all night. The next morning, we were ready to go down to the police department and file a missing persons report on her. And,
wow.
She just decided to go to some hotel room with some guy. And I'm like, you have no idea how dangerous that is here. Anywhere, really. Sure. But we're not even in our own country where we can trust the police. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if they were involved. We have no clue. So those kind of things, when it comes to situational awareness, you just have to make better decisions, and you can't let your emotions get in the way of what your gut is telling you.
That's great. That was great feedback. In terms of have a weapon, right? Daniela doesn't like to shoot. Like, guns scare her, right? Which I think most women, guns scare.
Sure.
So what advice do you give there to a husband with a wife that doesn't like a gun, to women that don't like guns?
A lot of husbands just send their wives to me. And I will tell you that one of the most rewarding parts of my job is taking a woman like that and going, just try it. You tell your kids they have to try their peas. They don't have to like them, but they have to try it once, and so do you. Because this is literally the skill that could make the difference between you being alive and you being dead. Your kid staying with you and your kid getting kidnapped and sold into a sex trading ring in Haiti. This, I'm telling you, it's like that. Okay. Now, statistically, is the likelihood of your kid getting snatched up out of your arms, is that huge? No, but it's not zero. Okay. And women we have to step up, and we have to start understanding that it is a possibility. And women talk a ton of shit, George, about I'm mama bear. Nobody messes with my kids. Miss my kids, got to deal with me. Really? What the hell are you going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It happened in Fort Worth. It happened in Fort Worth, Texas, when I was living there, 6 blocks from my house. A guy rolls up in a car. Mom and daughter are walking hand in hand down the street. It's a beautiful day. It's like 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun's still out. He doesn't say a word. He gets out of the car, snatches the kid right out of her arms. She runs, gets in the car, in the passenger seat, starts hitting him in the face. He booted her ass right out of the car. Took off with her kid. Could you imagine? It's not zero. And the whole difference, and I'm not blaming her, I'm just showing her the whole difference was, did you have a weapon? Because she made it into the car. If she would have had a knife, if she would have had pepper gel, if she would have had a gun, she could have taken that guy out right there. Right there. And it doesn't mean it wouldn't have been a traumatic experience, but you know what? Her 8-year-old wouldn't have been kidnapped and taken to a hotel and sexually assaulted. How bad do you think she feels about that? Do you see what I'm saying? So I take women, so the most rewarding thing is for me taking women like that who say, it scares me, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, what scares you more? The gun or your kid being kidnapped? Or your kid being hurt? Like, what scares you more? You got to really think about that, okay? Because as adults, we have to do things every day where we overcome fear. We have to do it in business. We have to do it in our personal lives. Like, how fearful, when the first girl you ever asked out, how fearful were you of rejection?
Yeah, it's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah.
But at some point, you got to ask the question, if you want a girlfriend that's going to become a wife, that's going to become a mother, that's going to become a life partner, right?
Yep.
Where are we at with this? Okay. And so that's the most rewarding thing in my job, is taking a woman like that, spending an hour with her at the range and watching her literally in 60 minutes become a different person and go, holy shit, I can do this. This is nothing. It's just a loud noise, a little movement in the hand. And look, I hit right where I was aiming. It's the most, I can't even put into words how incredible it is. But it doesn't come without cost, right? So for me, like I have spent probably the last 5 to 7 years discovering my own femininity that I didn't have before, right? Because I grew up, a man was my primary influence. I liked to do things that guys liked to do. I didn't have like a huge maternal instinct, right? And so when I got the counseling that I needed for my rape, and I started to really gradually get into that mindset that men are important and that we need them, and I don't want to be alone, right? I don't want to be that woman that just hates men all the time. I mean, it's really, really annoying. Like now when I look at women who are like, men just suck and we don't need them for anything, I'm like, you're so annoying. We do need them. And so I had to rediscover that. And in rediscovering that, I learned that God being a mom is such a cool thing. And there's an art to creating a home. Like, it's what we're good at. It's what we're meant to be good at, right? Like, and it's hard. It's hard to raise kids, and it's hard to create a home, and it's hard to create a culture in a family and create tradition. Like, that stuff is hard. And women are good at it. And we diluted that part of us in exchange for what? Loneliness and bitterness. So I exist in this really weird space where I'm like discovering the parts of me as a woman that make me very important. But I'm also teaching this skill that is a little unorthodox for a woman to teach.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to bring women into a place where there's a balance, where you can go, I'm all woman, and I love being a mom, and I love creating a home, and I love serving my husband, and I love being a wife, but also, if you fuck with my family, I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I want.
That was great. That was powerful. The last part of it, scenario-based training. For people, where does a normal person go to get scenario-based training? They could reach out to you, right? And you operate in different states, right?
I do. I'm in 10 states.
Okay.
Yes.
Outside of that, is that a normal thing? Because I only know about scenario-based training through you.
Right. It's becoming more normal.
Okay.
It's becoming much more normal. There are, the USCCA has a lot of really good classes on this. They also offer a really good thing that the USCCA, which is the United States Concealed Carry Association, I believe. They also offer, because this education is very multifaceted. And so not only do you have to understand the weapon, you understand how to use the weapon, combatives associated with using the weapon, medical associated with using the weapon. You have to understand the law associated with using the weapon. And that's another thing that the USCCA does really well is they teach you, gun law, what to do in the aftermath. What do you say to the cops and what do you not say to the cops? What do you need to look for in a good lawyer? I interviewed 9 lawyers when I really started to get into this, and I was carrying a gun every day. I interviewed 9 lawyers, and I wanted to know their track record. I wanted to understand their personality. I wanted to build a relationship. I always say the 3 best relationships that a woman can have is with her lawyer, her CPA, and her mechanic. Because those are areas in which we get taken advantage of a lot because we're women. So scenario-based training is becoming really, really popular. There are groups that you can seek out on Facebook that offer it, and you can look for instructors in your area that do this kind of stuff. You want to vet them, though. You want to understand, why are they teaching what they're teaching? What's their experience level? Just because they were in the military does not mean that they understand this. A lot of people, the rules of engagement are different in the military than they are in civilian life. You want to make sure that your instructor understands the body's 7 natural reactions to stress, stimulus, and fear. That's a big one. If they can tell you how the body reacts, things like tunnel vision, things like where, your finer motor skills versus your grosser motor skills, because your blood is shunted from the limbs into the center of your body when you get an adrenaline dump, right? So you don't have your finer motor skills. They're not as good, anymore. So, the things that the instructors should know these things. But you can find them in your area. It's becoming more and more prevalent. And if anybody that's watching this needs a recommendation for an instructor, in their area, I probably have one, and they can contact me on the socials at Clearing the Chamber.
Okay. And then on the flip side, that's for women. On the flip side, what is it for men? Because for me, when I'm driving and somebody disrespects me, I go from 0 to I'm not going to hit somebody. But I'm like, you mother, and I'm trying to work on it being a Christian guy. And I'm like, don't, but road rage,
Yeah.
I've had a person accidentally cut the person off, and guy got next to me, swerved his truck into me, so there's, how do you, what are the most common things that guys deal with in that situation in terms of guns, making the right decisions? Do you know what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Same things you said for women,
yes,
but for men.
Yes. The biggest rule in conflict situations that you have to understand from a psychological standpoint is that in any point in your day, you are in one of 3 ego states. You're either in a parent ego state, a child ego state, or an adult ego state. And so being able to identify that and control it is very important, because in any conflict situation, you coming at me in a parental ego state, how do you think I'm going to respond? In a child ego state. If you say my way or the highway, I say, I'm grown up. You can't tell me what to do, right? That's how and that's going to get us nowhere. So we have to be in the adult ego state in a conflict situation, and we have to make a conscious choice to be there. So your ego is not your amigo. And you have to think about, like, why am I about to make this move? Why am I about to say this thing, right? It's because I'm angry. When in reality, do you want to be right or do you want to be alive? And sometimes that's the choice that you have to make. And so foundationally, as a society, we need to have crucial conversations. That's one of the things that I enjoyed so much about working with Alexis at PHP, is she was so good at that. You know, she had kind of mastered, that art, and she encouraged me to read that book. And so now I have a much better understanding. Women deal with it too, but men are, God, you guys are just all that testosterone, and you're like, oh, and you get so mad, and you have to make a conscious decision, because it's really manly for you to be able to kick somebody's ass, but choose not to do it.
Sure.
Choose to, hey, I want to talk to you about this, instead of going over here, because if we go over here, we can never come back, right? So I want this to be the last resort, and I want to talk to you now. Road rage thing, that's not something, you can't have a crucial conversation driving 70 miles an hour down the highway. So really what we need to do is we need to make a conscious decision to just not engage. Scale back. You're not in that big of a hurry. If you get there a couple minutes late for this situation, it's not that big of a deal. And so men just need to calm down and learn emotional control a little bit more. Because when it comes to things like road rage or defending your wife, and things, and don't think that women can't be catalysts in that, man. There are a lot of women that like to pick fights. And so that's one thing that men have to look at when they're dating too, is this woman a drama queen? If she's a drama queen, you don't want to have anything to do with her, because all she's going to do is get you hurt or killed. She's going to get you in a bunch of stuff you can't get out of. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your family. It's going to affect your business. Right? And it could, at the end of the day, affect your life.
So if I'm watching this and I want to make sure my family's we're protected, right? Where does somebody start with, hey, let's examine our life and see where there's risk. Should we protect our house first? Should we have a plan? Where do you advise families to start?
Yes. The first class, so on my website, clearingthechamber.com, I have what's called a pathway to training. And so you start with intro to handgun, you go into LTC, which is license to carry, and that's when you kind of start carrying on your person. And then you go into what we call intuitive defensive shooting, which is draw from holster training on steroids, right? So don't think for one second that if you go and buy a gun and it sits on your nightstand that you understand how to really use it and carry it on your body. There's formal training that you need to have for that, and there's nuances and things that you need to understand about the art of the draw, exaggerated trigger discipline, things like that. And then you get into my class, the what if scenarios, which is essentially what we did at your office, was a what if scenarios, big, huge. It's the biggest class I've ever done for the what if scenarios. And then there's different, so I kind of set it up like a university, right? Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And then there's things that you can take in between or after that I consider to be electives, right? So protect what you're expecting, or how to protect what you're expecting, preparing what you wear, things like that. And so I have a class called Protect This House, where I teach people how to formulate their own family emergency plans that are customized to them. And you start with my class, and that's your foundational plan. And then you insert things into it that are customized to your life and your house and where you live and how your home is set up. And I've gone into people's homes and I've shown them their vulnerable areas. People have actually, which I think is so smart, people have actually gotten with me and showed me plans of homes they're building and going, poke holes in it. Tell me where I'm vulnerable here. And there are times in which I've brought in really seasoned level 4 security professionals, and people who are, who it's their job to breach boundaries and breach doors and breach buildings and stuff, like to test security. And I brought them in to look at it. And, they'll say, hey, well, if it were me, I would do this, this, and this, right? And then the homeowner has the opportunity to go, that's a good idea, because, like, for instance, I'll give you a quick example. The way that this person's house was laid out, the children's rooms were very exposed if someone broke into the house. Through either the front door or there was a door in the kitchen that went out into the yard. If any one of those doors which is where they're going to come in at, the kids' rooms were extremely exposed because the parents' rooms were and this was a big house, were way on the other side of the house. So number one, you're not going to hear shit. Number two, if they walk into a room to see what's happening in there, that's where your kids are. And can they defend themselves yet? The answer is no. Effectively, no. So they redid the entire bottom floor of their house so that the parents' the primary suite was closest to those doors so that they could hear what was going on, and then they put the kids' rooms over there. So you see what I'm saying? You don't always have that luxury if you're buying a home that's already been built, but if you're building a home, it's a really good idea to have those consultations.
That's great feedback. So start with, that's called the path to, what's it called?
Pathway to training.
Pathway to training, and it's on clearingthechamber.com. So it starts with gun, being able to shoot.
Yeah, intro to handgun.
Then 2, license to carry. Because some states you don't need, like Texas, you don't need a license to carry. It's constitutional carry, right?
Yes, you don't. It's not permitted it's not required anymore for you to have a license to carry. The program is still available to you, and I do highly recommend it because you're getting that legal education and it's very, very concentrated to Texas legal education that you really need if you're going to start carrying a gun around all the time. You need to take it.
So I did the course. I did it with Sylvia in our office, and I'm going to have Daniela do it, but it definitely talked about the legal things afterwards because you don't think that you're going to jail, but you're going to get it,
Well, and I love that you said that you're gonna really persuade Daniela to do that, because even if she never carries a gun ever, you need to understand what other people can legally do, so that you don't freak out and think, oh my God, that's so illegal. Oh, you don't freak out. Like, now you know the law and what people what people can do under the law, and it makes you much less afraid of it because you understand, oh, that's legal. But it's legal, but it makes me uncomfortable, so I'm gonna move myself away from this. You know what I mean? Like, it's very good education for people I've had people take my LTC class that want nothing to do with guns. They're like, I just want the education to understand what people can and can't do. Like, I need to know when I need to call the cops and when I need to not call the cops, basically.
And so that class, there was a part of it where it teaches you that there's financial, you may like things not to do, things not to say. What's the biggest mistake people make in that moment, when there is a moment and they have a gun?
Yes. The aftermath, the biggest mistake is indiscreet statements made at the scene by the accused.
So give an example of that, please.
Yeah. So if you think that you're going to talk yourself out of getting arrested for shooting somebody, you're high. It's never going to happen.
You're getting arrested.
You have foundationally committed a crime. And now you have to formally go. That's why due process exists, and you want it. You're going to go to the police station. You're going to be formally arrested. That's not a problem. A lot of people think that's a problem. It's not a problem.
When you say formally arrested, like put in cop car
Miranda
or handcuffed?
rights, yes. They're going to take you to the station. You're going to call your lawyer. You're not going to say anything to the police. You're going to wait for your lawyer to be present, and you're going to tell your lawyer everything. Counselor-client confidentiality is one of the things that I have seen for years and years and years. It is so respected and revered in the industry. You can trust your lawyer. You need to talk to them and tell them everything, even if you messed up, because there's a chance that your lawyer can present it in a way that isn't so bad, right? But if you try to do it yourself, if you try to talk yourself into, represent yourself or make a statement without the proper counsel, you're going to mess something up. It's almost guaranteed. Okay. So you need to understand the aftermath of that and how important that is. So
what do you do in that moment? Let's just say, and then we'll go back to pre.
It's very easy. When the police show up at the scene of the self-defense incident, we can get more into what you should say on the 911 call. Let's do a part 2. We'll do a part 2 at some point, and we'll really do a deep dive into what that aftermath looks like.
But basic, just for somebody that maybe isn't a part.
When the cops show up, if you had to shoot somebody in self-defense and they're dead, even if they're not dead, the police show up and they start asking you questions, because you have to remember that's their job.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, whether or not they believe in the Second Amendment or not, their job is to gather information at that point. That's their job. So it's protecting and serving. Now they're serving by gathering information. That's their job. So all you have to say is, I plead the fifth and I want to wait for my attorney. And legally, they cannot ask you any more questions.
Got it.
That's part of due process.
Okay.
Right? Now, the biggest mistake that people make with their guns in self-defense situations is, number one, not training enough and being proficient. So then you miss your mark and you hit somebody innocent, and now you're responsible for that, right? And that could be something, that now you're looking at a whole different court case, right? And now you're on trial for involuntary manslaughter or something of the like. That's a big problem. And number two, it's not taking enough training to be able to analyze a shoot, don't shoot scenario. Sometimes you shoot people and you shouldn't. Sometimes the person on your porch isn't a threat to you. They're just drunk and at the wrong house. It's happened before. I mean, I'm pulling these examples out of court cases that I've studied. And so, or sometimes the person that's, I'm trying to think of another example, but that one's a really good one is, somebody showed up on somebody's house and they were drunk and they thought it was the house that they were supposed to be at. It happened to me. I lived in an apartment in Fort Worth, and it was like right in the middle of one of those entertainment districts. So I was by all the bars and restaurants and stuff. And this girl apparently met these two guys and agreed to a pretty wild night. And the guys had been drinking, and they got the apartment number flipped. And so they showed up at my apartment instead of this girl's apartment. And when I wouldn't let them in, they got mad because they were like, we left the bar to come here and do the things that you wanted us to do, and now you won't let us in. And they were mad, and they were like banging on my door. And so, I'm like, hey, I'm not the person, like, get out of here. And they're, and they were drunk and very persistent. So I opened up the door and shoved a Glock in their face. I was like, you're at the wrong house. That's what I tried to tell you. And they're like, whoa. And then they called the cops on me. And we're like, some girl, so I had to deal with the police, I had to call my lawyer and go, hey, I need to make a statement. Here's what happened. And the lawyer's like, you're fine to just make that statement without me. They got nothing on you. And I did. So you have to understand a shoot, don't shoot scenario. You have to understand the aftermath and dealing with lawyers and understanding your financial, this is something that you probably know a lot about, being a finance guy. Things are expensive. Well, and every bullet that comes out of your gun is $100,000.
Well, you could win the criminal case and still lose the civil one, mm-hmm. And then you owe money.
Yes. And California set a terrible precedent on that, by the way, because they allowed this man was getting robbed. And the short version of the story is the victim pulled the gun out, shot the robber. Robber died. The robber had a child with a woman. And I think what happened is some, ambulance chaser attorney got a hold of her and said, hey, you have a case here because, where are you going to get child support now? And so the state of California allowed that civil trial to commence and found in favor of her through a jury. And that person who was a victim, who was getting robbed randomly, who didn't provoke or ask for any of that, had to pay that woman like $60,000 or $70,000 in child support. How are you going to pay for that?
Yeah, that's
right?
crazy.
So having and you're in the insurance business, having a legal protection plan is actually a really good thing. They're like $18 to $30 a month, and that's going to save you. And so if you paid for that for 40 years, it'd be somewhere around 17, 18 grand maybe. If you go to trial, if you have, especially a grand jury trial, you're going to be out 250 grand easy.
So if people make the decision to carry a gun, they should absolutely have insurance. They
should get a policy. Yes, I think it's very wise. The two The two pieces of insurance, I've been self-employed for a long time, so I didn't have the luxury of health insurance for a long time, which is why being healthy was so important to me. Exercise, right foods, all that stuff is medicine, right? So when you don't have insurance, that becomes very important to you. But but there are areas of health insurance that I think are a huge scam. And there are other pieces of insurance that I think are a huge scam. But I think that legal insurance policies and life insurance are very important.
What are the biggest mistakes that people make with carrying guns? Like if somebody decides to carry, right? Hey, I want to protect my family. I know you already talked about not making sure you don't do enough training with it. But what are any other mistakes that people should avoid?
Yes, drinking and carrying is a problem. So in the state of Texas, you can drink and carry, but you can't be drunk and carry. And a lot of people don't really know and understand their limits. So my sort of mantra on that is, more than one lose the gun, right? If I'm stopping at if Daniela and I were best friends and I was stopping after work to have a glass of wine with her before I went home, one glass of wine isn't going to, unless it's just enormous, but like one normal glass of wine isn't going to do anything to really impair my abilities. Okay. So I'm not going to take my gun all the way home or leave it in the vehicle because if the gun's not on you, it's not on you. You don't have it. So this whole idea, and that's another mistake that people make, is this idea of, well, I have a gun in the car, I'm safe. Is it with you, on you immediately? Like, when are you going to have time to run to the car and go get it? Like, you have to think about that. If it's not on you, it's not on you. That's a big saying in the gun community. And 2 is 1 and 1 is none is another.
What's that? What'd you say?
2 is 1 and 1 is none in the gun community, right? So I usually have more than one weapon on me, right? Because if something happens to one, I need a backup, right? So you always want to have a backup.
Okay.
But this, I'm a gun owner and, I know my limits and 3 drinks doesn't affect me. Well, you're not just going to catch a case like a DUI or a DWI case. You're going to catch a whole gun case, which is even worse. And that's problematic to your reputation in your community. It could be problematic to your business, and it's going to probably even be problematic to your family, right? So, carrying a gun and taking on the responsibility of protecting one's self effectively and one's family effectively is a very, very important thing for you to wrap your head around. And the life decisions that you make, since I started carrying often, and especially since I became a prominent instructor with name recognition, my drinking has decreased dramatically because I can't risk it. I can't risk getting pulled over and a cop that has a vendetta, or it may even be justified, right? Going, oh, you're drunk and you're carrying a gun. This is going to be bad for you. Like, that would annihilate my profession, my reputation in my profession.
For sure.
And so I can't, I really can't risk it. So it's certainly a big responsibility and a lifestyle choice that has to be taken seriously. You have to carve out time to train because it's a perishable skill. You're going to forget. If you don't train, you're going to forget the things that I taught you when I was here a few months ago. If you don't revisit it often, and it doesn't have to be every day and it doesn't even have to be every week, but it does have to be a habit that you have to form in a lifestyle that you have to really kind of embrace. Yeah.
We did that maybe 2 months ago. I said, babe, you're going to be in the kitchen and you're going to cut yourself. Okay. What now we have what's it called? Tourniquet. Mm-hmm. Now we have a tourniquet in the house. We have a tourniquet in every car. I
brought you a whole big bag.
Car accident.
Yeah. I brought you a big bag of tourniquets. I was like, put them everywhere because you just never know. It's the easiest, simplest tool. But if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Yeah. We also have those plastic handcuffs, the plastic, you know what I mean? I got some in that drawer. I got some in the truck. Just because I'm like, if somebody's out of control, and you don't want to shoot them, if you could subdue them.
And you have to think about these things, not just as a man and not just as a father and a husband, but you have to think of these things as an employer. Too, workplace violence is a thing.
Oh, yeah. We had somebody come to the office, our last office. They had an altercation with somebody's son worked there. Said some disrespectful things to the agent. The agent told the son's mom, hey, your son can't talk to me that way. She went back, or the kid went back, told his stepdad or his dad, and he showed up and just started swinging on one of the agents and then came back after that. We kicked him out of the office. called the cops, and then he came back and he said, I'm going to come back here and kill you guys. So that is a real thing.
And you have to take those threats seriously. You can't over or underreact to something like that. It has to be a balance in the middle and going, we're going to take this threat seriously, and here's what we're going to do in response to that threat. Because if you slough it off as nothing and then one of your employees gets killed because you didn't take it seriously, you're going to feel really bad about that. Like, that's going to really affect your soul, your heart, your mind.
Yeah.
Right. But if you overreact to it, there's implications there as well. So that's why I gave you those little tips, because, the story I told you about it was when I was doing private security, I learned a very valuable lesson my first night, because my partner and I had to arrest 4 people and we only had 2 sets of handcuffs. Well, now there's a problem. We have to find a solution to the problem. And and you carry too many sets of handcuffs, it gets heavy. It's like, it's not, there's not enough room on the belt for it. But zip ties and plastic handcuffs they're very mobile. They don't take up a lot of space.
Sure.
I have them in my backpack. So I'm really glad that you did that. I'm really glad that those are 2 very important things. Tourniquets and the zip ties are very important and very small, inexpensive things that you can implement.
Yeah, and if you ever need them, they're going to change your life,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and then Elvis told me the story about like the day, because he was here for part of the class. I think he came in just a bit late because he had a couple meetings, but he had told me that, he's like, I had some people show up at my house literally the night after.
Oh, I didn't hear the story.
He was like, I had some people show up. He knew them, but he didn't know they were coming over.
Oh, yes, he did tell me that.
Yeah, and he was like, and it was literally in the middle of the night. I woke up out of a dead sleep, and there was people like banging on my door, and I didn't know who it was. And, we had talked about a layered defense. I was like, you got to get some cameras so that you can see, who's at the door, because that alleviates a lot of stress. If you can see who's at the door and you know them and you trust them, immediately the blood starts to circulate better, again. But if you don't know who they are, and he told me, he was so funny. He was like, I got up and I was like, state your business, I'm armed.
Yeah, because you had taught us to say that. Yeah. State your business. If somebody wants to start with this and like, hey, because like when we go out, even like to the movie theaters now, I'm like, because you hear shootings at restaurants, movie theaters, everywhere. So I always do my best when I'm with my family. I don't carry as much by myself, which I should, but whenever I'm with my family and we're going out like on a Sunday or family day, I always carry. So if somebody wants to start and saying, you know what, I'm going to go learn this. One, if you're in a state that doesn't allow you to carry, what advice would you give to that person?
You need to get involved in politics.
Okay. Let's say they're not going to get involved in politics. What's their other alternative?
They don't have one.
Like
they
a rubber bullet gun, taser.
I said that. That was a terrible thing for me to say, and I take it back. I regret that. Yes, there's a platform called the Byrna that is an alternative. It shoots out 64 caliber rubber bullets coated in OC spray. That could be an alternative. Most states do allow mace and pepper gel and pepper spray. That's an alternative. The problem with that is you have to be in very close quarters for that to be effective, and distance is insurance, right?
Got it.
A knife is never a bad tool. I mean, it's useful for so many other things other than self-defense. But the thing is, you do need to take a blade class. I took a class on how to effectively carry a knife and how to effectively attack or defend with a knife. And there is an art to that that will lower the likelihood of you, because once again, a knife is a very close quarters tool. So you run the risk of also getting
somebody
hurt,
taking it from you,
as well. Or you can move to a state that loves freedom.
Yeah, we moved from California to Texas.
You can do that.
For sure.
There's definitely options. But one of the other things that I would recommend is, if you're going to get started in this, is you can't just say, I'm going to get started and I want to learn how to defend myself. You have to make time for it. And that's a class that I teach too. I teach a very effective time management class. And you have to figure out and prioritize what's important in your life and what's not. And you have to cut out the fat. You have to cut out the things that are ineffective, and you have to concentrate on the things that are going to make you money, keep you safe, and bring you joy. And before you do that, because what's going to happen is you're going to say, I want to do this, and then you're going to find an hour in a week to go and take that intro to handgun class. And then you're not going to be able to find another hour to move forward in your training for 6 months. And that's a problem, because then you have to start all over again. And that's a waste of time and it's a waste of money.
So you're saying if somebody decides to go this route, that they should have some aspect of it on a monthly basis that they're going to dedicate to that?
Yes, I recommend sitting down with a trainer just like me. Doesn't have to be me, can't be everywhere, but you have to sit down with a trainer and go, what's the commitment that I need to make? And the trainer has to be realistic with you, because there are some trainers that are, just out for the dollar, and they'll say, well, you're going to need about 6 weeks of intro to handgun lessons, which is complete bullshit. If you're a good trainer, no one should need more than 3, in my opinion. No more than 3 intro to handgun lessons. And the reason for that is because some people get it after 1 lesson and then you can move on to the next thing. But some people are very apprehensive. There's a fear there, a mental fear that you have to overcome. And you're not just teaching a physical aspect of something. You're also a mental coach. I have to teach people how to mentally overcome fear, right? And I do that. The most effective way that I do that is by being a personal example. I'm not better than you. I'm a 5'7", 140-pound female that mastered this. How come I can do it and you can't? There is no reason why I can do it and you can't. We're exactly the same, So, you have to sit down with the trainer and go, and the trainer says, I want to put you through a 4-class academy, and I want to do it within 8 months. That's what I want to do. I want to do it within 8 months, because then your likelihood of forgetting the fundamentals is very low. And then I give them homework. I give them things to do at home with their dry gun, so that they stay in practice with the fundamentals. That way that when we get back together after that intro to handgun lesson, they're not concentrating on grip, stance, sight, picture, trigger pull. They're concentrating on marksmanship and recoil management and moving forward into weapons retention and combatives.
And that process, if I'm starting to being able to the end of it, is it a 1-year deal, would you say?
It could be a 1 year or less deal. And then you're considered, in my opinion, as a professional, you're considered an experienced shooter who understands safety, marksmanship, recoil management, and then you've got some combatives experience under your belt. You have some dynamic critical reload experience under your belt, right? Now you have to put yourself on a maintenance program and go, now for the next year, for 2025, what does that look like for me? Well, it looks like practicing doing dry fire exercises every single morning with your gun. It's okay if you skip a couple days here and there, right? We all get busy, but it has to be a part of your lifestyle and you have to commit to it. So I do dry fire exercises, drawing from the holster for 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes is a long time to pull a gun out of a holster, point it out and put it back, right? Load it, check it, rack it, shoot it, drop it drills. That doesn't take a long time either. And then you have to commit to that. And then you have to commit to doing live fire, I would say at least once a month. Because that way the recoil management aspect, because you can do a ton of training with a gun with no bullets. You would be shocked at the amount of training you can do with a gun with no bullets. But you do have to incorporate that marksmanship aspect and that recoil management aspect. And once a month is, you're talking about $25 for a lane, right? So.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, So 1 year plan, 0 to I can defend my family. We have a plan. We have a strategy. Morning trainings, and then 1 monthly maintenance. Okay. Any other advice that you think is critical we didn't cover today for people that are watching this? Because I know we went through a lot.
The last aspect of this is financial. It takes money to learn this. And that's another reason why I started Wade. Was because these women who were coming out of these abusive relationships, this is a skill that they needed to learn, but it was a skill they couldn't afford. And that was a problem for me. And so I would tell people who want to learn this, and this directly correlates to your business because this is what you do. You encourage and inspire people to become very financially sustainable and dependable, wealthy even, right? And that's so important because the opportunities that lie in front of you, not just business opportunities, but the opportunities for you to be able to afford to learn things that other people can't, puts you at a huge advantage in society, for your safety, for your family. You just become indispensable in life. It changes you. So this Two, should inspire you to get your money right because your safety is literally at risk. Now, can you learn some things on YouTube and social media and the internet? Absolutely. But this idea of you have to be able to afford the weapon. You have to be able to afford the training, the physical training that you're not going to be able to get on the internet. You have to be able to afford those things. And so I started a foundation where I help people, women who have a specific niche need who can't afford those things. But what about everybody else? What about just the general, 19 or 20-year-old kid, right? And that's another last statistic that I want to talk about before we wrap up is, in the last 2.5 years, I've seen an insane uptick in my male clientele. And before, most of my male clientele came from my female clientele, wives that would go home and tell their husbands, look at all this I've learned. And then the husband was so ecstatic at what the wife learned that the wife actually taught him something. And now he thought, man, maybe I need to take a formal class. I mean, I learned from my grandpa and he was a great guy, but I didn't know all this, right? So then I would get, as a byproduct, the husband that would come and learn these things from me. And then I was able to turn him over to other instructors that could teach unorthodox shooting position. Like, that's not a class I teach, it's a class I take, right? So I could turn him over to other instructors. I have seen a huge uptick in the last 2.5 years of men, grown men, ages 18 to 25 that have never shot a gun before in their life. And here's what that tells me. It tells me that fathers aren't stepping up. That's what it tells me. And so that's my encouragement too through this is, if you're a dad, this is a skill that you need to have, and it's a skill that you need to pass on to your sons, because protection and provision is essential to being a man. Period. End of story. All day long. You can still be empathetic and sympathetic and loving and kind, but protection and provision is your main mission. And if you can't do it, you're worthless. I'll say it. I'll say it right now. You're worthless. What are you ever going to be able to do for your wife? What are you ever going to be able to do for your kids if you can't physically step up and protect them?
Sure.
And that's where I'm going to leave it.
So I'm that open to two things. One, if there's so you're nonprofit. It's a nonprofit, or is it a organization? Wait.
It's a nonprofit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So break it down for me again. Women.
It's the Women's Awareness and Defense Endeavor.
Okay.
We do a lot more than that. It kind of evolved into other things. Like, we do help women find jobs. We help them sometimes. We work with other organizations to help them get into housing and shelters, and things like that to keep them safe. And restorative houses, because sometimes the aftercare is very important. Well, all the time, the aftercare.
So somebody
really
that's
important.
in an abusive relationship, they reach out to your organization, or somebody introduces that person to you.
Mm-hmm. We get referrals, and then we work with them sometimes for months at a time to help them form a plan to get out, because you have to realize that these women don't have any resources. The man controls their money. The man is keeping an eye on them. Sometimes they even keep mileage on their car. I was in a relationship like that where my fiance at the time, this was in my early 20s, would literally keep the mileage on my car and ask me where I had been. And if it didn't add up, there was a problem.
Wow.
So no resources. Okay. So we have to be able to provide those resources. And then, of course, part of what we do is once they get signed off on from a counselor that says this person's state of mind is much better now, then we put them in self-defense training. I'm not putting a gun in the hands of an abused woman 2 days after she got out of a bad relationship. But what I do is, when they're ready to get out, and this is the red tape that I just threw in the trash, because it used to be you'd call the cops and the cops would come, and they could do what was called like a civil standby or something like that, where they would stay there, and the woman could gather some things and get out and go to a shelter or a friend's house or her parents or whatever. A lot of law enforcement won't do that anymore because we've tied their hands so egregiously. on that, I will go and get them out. I've done it 130 something times.
Wow.
You know, where I will go to your house and I will knock on the door and he will answer it and I will say, I'm coming to get her. Like, we're going to get some stuff and she's going to come with me. And I'm not saying it would never happen because I'm just, you know, I'm not that naive. But I haven't been attacked yet, because more often than not, people like that, predators like that, narcissists like that, abusers like that, when they come face to face with somebody, they can see it in your eyes that you're not going to put up with that bullshit. When they come face to face with it, more often than not, they back down. Has it gotten a little bit hairy a couple of times? Sure. But I will go. Courage is currency. I have been blessed. You know, Patrick Bet-David said this the other day on a podcast, and it hit home. It hit me in my soul so hard I wept. And he said, I have been blessed with this incredibly amazing life. Like, God has blessed me with this insane, beautiful life. Who am I to be a coward? And man, I never knew how to articulate that before. And that's exactly how it is. Who am I to be a coward? And so my courage is currency. I want to teach other people how to do it. I want to get them out of the places that they fear and bring them into the light and show them that there's a different life out here for them if they just believe in themselves. And I know that sounds corny and cliche, but it's the absolute God's honest truth.
For sure.
There's so much more out there.
And then the last question is this. You know, you talked about, like, be aware of where you are, things like that. For people that maybe they're even saying, some are going to go maybe say, I want to do this course. I'm going to reach out to Jerah. I'm going to go, you know, learn firearms. I'm going to go through the class and license to carry, learn the law. I'm going to get the insurance. I'm going to make this a part of my life. For that person or somebody else that says, I'm not going to go that route, but I still want to be more aware when they're living their life, like just being more aware. Like when we go to the movies today, I'm like, okay, I got to sit by an exit, like, you know, or we go to a restaurant today, I'm like, I got to know where the exit's at. Like, just people kind of have to be more aware, because it may be that one day something happens, right? And God willing, it never happens to anybody. But if it does happen, right, what general advice would you give to just people like that? Like, just be aware overall of locations. Like, you go to a concert today. Like, I think about it everywhere I go. I go to the Moody Center and there's a concert, you know, where you go through the metal detectors or whatever they are, the scanners now. But as the world becomes, you know, crazier, right? Any advice on that?
Yeah, your greatest weapons are your awareness and your feet. You know, you see something that doesn't look right, that could affect you. You have to have the wherewithal to move. And you have to have the wherewithal to make that decision to go, this doesn't feel right, I'm getting out of here. I don't care if I'm wrong. Something in my gut, you know, I'll give you some homework. If you haven't already read it, the book, and everyone in your office should read it too. It's called The Gift of Fear. Make it part of your book club. It's a great book. It's the hands down greatest situational awareness book ever. And I make all of my Wade women read it because it says, you know, in there's a part that talks about domestic abuse. And Gavin DeBecker says in the book, if you get hit once, you're a victim. If you get hit twice, you're a willing participant. And that's part of the psychoanalysis that abused women have to open up and understand about themselves. Is it's not victim blaming, it's the truth. You have become complicit in your own demise at that point. So you have to be willing to trust your gut. You have to be willing to get out. It's going to be tough, but that's part of life, and there are resources, you know, out there to help you. So those are your two greatest gifts in self-defense, is your awareness and your feet. If weapons aren't your thing, if that's fundamentally outside the realm of your belief system, I would never in a million years buck that or argue that okay, I would love for your mind to change on that, but I'm not going to force it, and I'm not going to get upset about it. You know, and then the third thing is, you know, understand, you know, you probably need to take a class or get some guidance on how to react in a sort of an active shooter, you know, situation, because those are still statistically a rare occurrence, but they are becoming a little more prevalent, right? We have to pay attention to that, and we have to admit it. And it is because of the mental health decline in this country. I don't care what anybody says. It's not about the guns. But I had the extremely cool and just, I don't know another way to say it, but it was an honor to train someone who was a victim of the Las Vegas shooting during the Jason Aldean concert. She came to me for training in Texas. She got shot in the foot, actually, during that whole situation. And we talked about, she was like, what should I have done? Like, what was there? And I was like, your options were very limited because you were in a very crowded place, a lot of chaos. I was like, but the thing that you have to remember in situations like that, especially because, he was up high and they were down low, you have to keep moving. Like, you have to keep moving. You have to pay attention to the sound and where it's coming from. You have to quickly assess the situation. And obviously you want to move in the opposite direction of where that is. But really understanding the difference between cover and concealment is very important, right? Concealment will hide you, but cover will stop bullets. So having a simple education, in a ballistics education, which, by the way, you can get on YouTube. You don't even have to come to class with me about it, okay? You can go and get a ballistics education on YouTube tomorrow and understand what calibers will go through what substances. Steel stops what? Wood stops what? Bricks stop what, right? And understand the difference between cover and concealment and identify it before something happens. So if you're going to a big outdoor concert, you need to, I get you want to be where the view is the best of the entertainment, and that's fine. But you also should consider being close to cover and concealment. Identify that when you walk in the venue and go, hey, Daniela, I'm not saying it will, and I don't want to make you paranoid, but if the shit goes down and there's an active shooter that walks in here, here's where we're going to go. And it's literally a 1-minute conversation with your wife, and now you have an effective plan that has a high likelihood of working out. Versus you having no plan and just freezing and freaking out.
Yep. Wow. Powerful story. Thank you for being on. So, clearingthechamber.com. Best way to get a hold of you?
Yep. And my email address, my phone number is even on there.
Okay.
You can leave me a message. Obviously, if I don't answer the phone, I'll call you back. I do believe in calling people back. I get so irritated with some of my friends because they're like, well, if you want a faster response, text me. I'm like, can you please just pick up just call me back?
Yeah.
Just pick up the phone and call me back.
Yeah. Well, we've started going on that journey since we started talking to you in terms of just defending our house, our family, things like that. So it's been effective. So thank you.
Love that. That makes me very grateful.
Yes.
Very
I almost got arrested at the airport because I forgot to take my bullets out of my backpack.
Oh, yeah, that'll happen. Yeah, weapons checks in bags are always like, that has to be on the list,
That's
the packing
on
list.
Every airport before I take my backpack out of the truck, I check I'm like, do I got a knife? Do I got a bullet? So anyways, thank you so much. So
it's my pleasure.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. There's stuff that we talked about today that could save your life, save your family, save somebody else. Don't take it lightly. Do something about it. Don't live in fear, but obviously do something about it so you have that peace of mind knowing that you have a plan. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.